key hanging out here, guys. Let's just get rid of that, shall we? All right. I do believe we are live, which is excellent. Want to thank anyone who's decided to join to come hang. And we're going to talk about Parler a little bit today. Waiting for a few folks to join up. Just give me one sec here, guys. Uh, Be right there, my dudes. Just having some technical difficulties. Classic. O key, do key. We are live. Everything seems to be working well. Hopefully, everyone can hear me okay. I don't actually have the chat in front of me right now, so if you guys have questions or stuff, please leave them, and hopefully at some point I will be able to actually review it and get back to you. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit today about this kind of, I don't want to say it's bombshell because there are no bombshells anymore as a result of the current political environment that we're in. But we're talking about Parler. So for those of you who aren't aware of what Parler is, and you can see I have it up on my screen here, site that cannot be reached because it is no longer on the internet. Parler is an alternative social media platform. It was essentially invented as sort of a alt-right version of Twitter. It was heavily popularized by alt-right people like Candace Owens, Alex Jones, essentially a lot of people who had a hard time saying anything on Twitter without having, their tweets restricted, censored, et cetera, et cetera. And a really important thing to just chime in on here is that Parler is hosted on AWS, that's Amazon Web Services, and a very important point as to why they're currently down. So why does Parler exist? Again, this is mostly a application or platform for the alt-right to escape Twitter's content moderation. Um, it's kind of billed as the free speech application, a place where you can just go and say anything that you want and not have it taken down because it incites violence or it's racist or anti-Semitic or whatever gradient of awful that you want to get into. And it's interesting now that they're really in the news, and there's a couple of reasons. What's fascinating about this is there's a true like coalescence of what's going on, and for some reason, this one particular application is just kind of in the crosshairs of it. So, as many of you have heard, Trump has been deplatformed off Twitter, and as a result, he basically said, "Okay, you don't want me on Twitter? Fuck it, I'll move over to Parler." And I'm going to bring my like 100 million, Twitter followers with me as well. Uh, the problem with Parler is that it was also used in order to orchestrate the Capitol riots for a lot of people to get together, to coordinate, to discuss. That it's a really fucked up echo chamber. I'd love to go in and show you some posts, but I can't because they don't the site's down. You actually can't log in the application anymore. And again, we're going to touch on why that is and why that's awesome shortly. But it was primarily used recently, or has gained a lot of notoriety, I should say, for the Capitol riots, for, again, right-wing extremists, just having a place where they can say absolutely insane shit and not get in any fucking trouble for it, right? So the next thing to kind of bring into the fore here is the fact that essentially, as a result of Twitter deplatforming Donald Trump, and all of these people finding sort of a safe harbor, if you will, in the Parler application, we've seen a huge move by tech companies to deplatform them. So the first thing that happened essentially was that Apple and Google had removed them from their stores. So that effectively doesn't stop the application from working. That just means that they've lost all distribution. So if you wanted to go and download the Parler app and log into the site through your mobile device, whether it be iOS or whether it be Android, you would essentially be incapable from doing so. You could still access it through a web browser if you wanted to, however. Or if you had an existing installation on your device, you could get it. But if you were a net new user and you wanted to use it on mobile, it wasn't going to happen because Google and Apple essentially deplatformed them. Then the real fucking big thing happened, and that was AWS or Amazon Web Services actually removing them from their servers. So for a lot of people out there who aren't super enterprise tech savvy, Amazon Web Services, or AWS, as we're going to call them from here out, is basically like the de facto standard for hosting these days. Most small organizations, medium businesses, and large enterprises at some level use AWS. And as a result, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, AWS has an enormous monopoly on just the web market, on server hosting, data centers, and if you want to host, a lot of the time you'll be hosting on AWS. There are alternate providers, but they make it cheap, they make it accessible. What's also interesting is that just you have a whole ton of tech ecosystems that they naturally integrate with. So, if you've got some kind of platform, it's going to be really easy for you to plug into an AWS infrastructure as opposed to a competitor like a GoDaddy or something like that, right? So that's why they're such an attractive host, and it's why it's a fucking huge deal that they've essentially been removed. Where I really want to talk a lot more about today is not necessarily the deplatforming and the politics behind that, because that's a whole other video. But what's super interesting is that there is a fucking huge data leak, and I want to sorry, the word I want to use for it, I want to disassociate from hack. This was not a hack. Hacking is when someone circumvents security procedures that are established in order to gain access to a system. So they're executing an exploit on a particular vulnerability, or they are phishing through credentials from a user through social engineering, or perhaps they're just brute forcing their way into a system or a database. What happened to Parler before they got removed from AWS, and this is where things are really important, is they weren't hacked, but they just practiced absolutely dog shit, what we call OPSEC, or operational security. And as a result from this fucking brilliant hacker, which I'm going to show you guys some stuff from in a minute here, called, I believe, Donk, was able to build some Python scripts to query the Parler API and scrape every archived post off of the website, including pictures, posts, user data, metadata. We're going to be looking at some of that metadata shortly. We're going to be looking at some of those user data. I downloaded some of the files. I pulled some of the repositories. Some really cool stuff in there, but like just the scale of what this hacker was able to do. And I called him a hacker because they call themselves a hacker, but this wasn't a hack, just to be clear. The scale of what this hacker was able to do was not just impressive because she was able to do it on her own. When she realized that they were being taken off AWS, it's like, okay, we have a very limited amount of time to pull all this shit off of their site. And in the headline that I have here, I think there was over 70 terabytes of data that essentially got leaked. What she did was she built essentially code to get multiple users to crowdsource the fetch of all this data. So we had all of these users on the internet all pulling down data in serial or parallel from Parler in order to grab as much stuff as they could as quickly as they could, so that we could have a full record of, and again, just to be clear, this isn't just what people posted publicly in Parler. This is what people posted and deleted. These are archived files. This is stuff the right-wing freaks that are on this site thought that they deleted and got rid of, but guess what? They didn't. And what's crazier about the stuff that's on Parler is it's not just the posts and the metadata, because that on its own you could easily, and I'm going to show you some of this, tie back to a particular individual. It's just some fucking easy search techniques. But if you wanted to be a verified user on Parler, you had to send them a government ID, so your driver's license, or a social security number. So they have photographs of people's social security numbers, driver's licenses, and this information has been scraped off of their website purely because they had an unsecured API that people could just fucking get into without any kind of authentication, it looks like. So that's where things get really, really interesting is when you start to see the type of data that was grabbed by this brilliant fucking hacker. All props to Donk. Not only were they brilliant and able to get the data, but they crowdsourced it to just increase the throughput or the download of all of that data. And what they're doing right now is they're assembling it all and they're going to post it to the Internet Archive. So within a couple of days, we're probably going to see a more, because right now it's all JSON files, it's all HTML, web links, URLs, gobbledygook for most people, and they are probably going to assemble it into some kind of cohesive shell in which people can browse it as if they'll either be able to go through the files, go through the pictures, go through the metadata, or they'll assemble it in a way that you can actually navigate it similar to maybe how it was on the app. I'm not too sure about that at this point. What I am sure about, guys, is that the amount of information that's going to come out of this is absolutely fucking crazy. Then the identification of people who are on this app is going to go through the roof in terms of we're going to know who's a Parler user, what they said, the kind of shit they believe. And again, just the brilliance of the people who got this information. And part of the reason why I wanted to start making some of these videos is because I have a lot of people these days asking me about IT security and about, blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to spend a lot of time getting into the ethics of, is Parler good, is Parler bad? I have my own thoughts on that. It's bad. But that's another video, that's another day. I really want to focus in on some of the dynamics of this leak, share some information with you guys, and if you find it interesting, I'd love to do more videos like this. So we're going to dive in a little bit more. As you can see, Parler is down, and that's because they've been de-hosted by AWS, so the servers are down. And this means that they have to take all of that data and essentially move it to a new web host. And that is not like a small effort. That's an enormous amount of effort. The other problem with Parler is that they have a credibility problem. They are being directly tied to the incitement of these riots. And what you're seeing is like vendors won't work with, like their lawyers are dropping them, their vendors are dropping them, their software, outsourcing companies are dropping them. No one wants to touch these guys with a 10-foot pole. So if you go to a private business and say, hey, I'd like to host on your shit, what's your name? Go fuck yourself. Like the conversation is over. You guys are done. It's going to be really, really difficult for them to find another web host, I think, personally. And it's not just the web host. It's about the vendors who are going to support their application, the people that are going to work there, et cetera, et cetera. Apologies. Ranting a little bit. Okay. Something I want to show you guys, which I find super fucking interesting. So this is a Google Trends search, which you can literally just look up words and see like what was the Google search interest, for Parler over the last X amount of time. So this goes back to January 2020. You can see that this, not a lot, not a lot, not a lot. All of a sudden, what happened in November? Was there some kind of is there a significant event in November that might correlate with an enormous increase in search? I don't know. Anyway, I'm just a crazy person. So anyway, you can obviously see that right around the November election, a shit ton of people started looking up Parler, started to want know more about it, yada, yada, yada. This is, I gotta say, this is the Donk's website. Donk is like the absolute shit. Like all respects to Donk for her amazing work in pulling this off. All of the Parler Trick repositories are posted on her website for people to take a look at. Some really interesting information here. I highly recommend that you guys check out either Donk's Twitter or website whenever you get a chance. And I pulled up a couple of Donk's tweets, which I think are super interesting. The first thing that I want to touch on really quickly, though, is the metadata that we got our hands on. And I've got my hands on some of these files, some of these metadata files. And if I can actually pull them up for you, just give me a hot second here, guys, while I should have been a little bit more organized when I did this, but, I'm me. So if we look at some metadata, let's pull this up. This is an example of a metadata file that's in the file. Now, we're talking about millions and millions of JSON entries with different pieces of metadata. And you can see they're all formatted in a very similar way. That's because, well, metadata, it has a framework to it, right? And it tells you what type of file this is. It's a movie. It's in the QuickTime extension, probably from an iPhone. It tells you the creation date of the file, modified date, things like the track duration, that this is a 20.11-second video, the volume's at 100%, gives us the dimensions of the video, which we could probably tie back to a device and the type of, the model of iPhone that's being used, the compressor name H.264, very common, the image size, the resolution, and the average bitrate. Now, what isn't necessarily in this metadata file is things like longitude and latitude. There may be some metadata files in this, but like if you guys could see the screen that I'm looking at, there's literally like millions of these, and I just don't have time to comb through them right now. But anyway, super interesting information that's hanging out inside of the metadata. Um, Another thing that I wanted to just point out really quickly that Donk pulled off that was pretty fucking brilliant is the parler mods. So Donk was able to do essentially an analysis on the way that the users were set up and posted, the internal sys ID of that user, their internal ID, the username of that person when they join. So this is going to be your date, your month, and probably there could be even a minute and second value here, so you could really tie it down. And then you've got fucking real names, or at least what they're calling themselves, right? So this is the kind of information that we are finding ourselves getting our hands on from this leak. Guys, bear with me for 2 hot seconds. My computer is dying of battery, and I knew I should have plugged it in earlier, so I don't break my dad's stereo unplugging stuff. I'm probably gonna. Oh, that's that. Sorry, guys. There's probably like no one there, and I'm apologizing to no one. Kidding. I jest. All right, cool. So back into it. Yeah, like look at this. Like Biden is a liar. This is going to correlate to a Gmail address. I almost guarantee you that if I'm just a fucking asshole and search this person, did you mean this? Is this the guy that I'm looking at? You know, that worked pretty fast. The point I'm trying to make is that there's an enormous amount of exposed data, right? You can see all of these users, you can see when they signed up, and I'm guaranteeing you a lot of this information is going to correlate to things like email addresses, usernames on all social media sites, whether it be Reddit or whatever, right? Again, let's just, we can search who's Jennifer Price. Let's take a look at this piece of shit. I'm sorry, guys. I am passing judgments on these cunts because, fuck them. Blah, 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 blah. Totally seems like someone who I really don't want to see on Twitter. Anyway, so it's super fascinating though that like people have this illusion that when you sign up for a website, your shit's safe. And this is like the most clear example of user data being exposed to the wild and it not taking like, again, all respects to Donk. Donk's brilliant, but like, I think they stumbled across this. Like, this wasn't something that was like, it was like, oh, I'm going to poke around a little bit. And it's like, oh, fuck. Like, I found some heavy shit here. So it's super fascinating just to see. And again, like, I will love to filter through this so you guys can look at names and maybe, say hello to some of these folks. I'm just kidding. I'm not advocating for any kind of reaching out. Back to the dog hack. So again, Crash Override. Love the name, by the way. Has basically just been posting like all kinds of shit. Like, here's the metadata from the 30 terabytes of videos. So that's the thing that I downloaded, was showing you some of the how to access the video and the blah 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 text files. So, this person, if you want to reach out and DM them and say, hey, how do I use these? They might give you a little bit of a clue on how you can start to take the metadata files, probably relating to like just a unique ID like this. I'll show you just really quickly here. I'm sure that if you just plugged in whatever this hash up here is probably going to be the name of your video file that it's pointing to. So, anyway, fucking respect to Donk, man. So yeah, 30 terabytes of videos. Here's the type of information that you're going to be seeing from people. I absolutely love, by the way, like what she put together here in terms of what happened right before Parler went down. Because you got to remember, as soon as the data was de-hosted from Amazon, we couldn't scrape the site anymore. So since a lot of people seem confused about this detail, and there is a bullshit Reddit post going around, only things that were available publicly via the web were archived. I don't have your email addresses, phone, or credit card number unless you posted it yourself. Okay? So again, all of this stuff was accessed through publicly available scraped information. And that's like the most wild part about it. It's not even a fucking hack. It's literally just like dumb assholes who left their shit out in the wrong place. Um, this is a post from the North Central Florida Patriots. These are people who are on Parler, and I just want to read this because, like, I think it's sinking in a little bit, but I'm not sure. Bad news left extremists have captured and archived over 70 terabytes of data from Parler servers. This includes posts, personal information, locations, videos, blah, blah. The intent is a mass dox and list to hold the Patriots accountable. It is too late to scrub your data. I love this part. It is too late to scrub your data and is already archived. There's nothing you can do to prevent what's already happened. I want to repeat this point. There's nothing that you can do to prevent what's already happened. And this is why, like, IT security breaches are so fucking critical, man, and why it's so important that, like, anything that you're putting needs to be behind secure, safe infrastructure, because guys, like, I say no more. Anyway, accountability may come in many forms, blah, blah, blah. Actually, this is all just like, this is crying. I don't give a shit about these guys. They're busted. This is fucking sick. So the raw videos are now in the archive project team, so you can actually see the uploads of them moving the fucking data across. Here's another graph of them moving, the 180 million files moving in it's an enormous amount of data. So, like, again, it's what is it, 70 plus terabytes, which is quite a bit of stuff. But again, collectively pulling posts at 1.6 gigs, they were just ripping as much stuff down as they could. And Donk crowdsourced this, like, was able to get other people to siphon off stuff in a way in which they weren't all grabbing the same stuff. There you go. Check this out. The crawl is now complete. 1 million videos. That's fucking so sick. We're gonna go through some of this stuff a little bit. I do want. There's one tweet. Is that what they're called? They're called twits. There's one twit that I love that she posted. It was for the journalist. Oh, here it is. So the journalist DMing me to ask, in non-technical terms, I describe the current Parler archival situation as a bunch of people running into a burning building, trying to grab as many things as we can. And that's quite literally what it was. Is they knew shit was going down. They knew the app was going to be basically scrubbed off of the internet, and they had a limited amount of time to grab some of this data. So again, you have the archive team here, through Magic Program, blah, blah, blah. We're starting the effort to define this is all other shit that isn't related to the actual hack. Running archive team project with Docker. This is how you use an application called Docker in order to connect to things, connect to APIs. And maybe we'll spend a hot second talking about what is an API? How do APIs work, and how did this happen? And that we're actually gonna hit on that in some of the later tweets. I've been trying to get to some of Donk's stuff on their site, but obviously, as I'm sure you can imagine, the amount of people that are hitting this shit right now and trying to get access to it, it's a lot. It's a lot of people. So not interested in this anymore. Sorry, guys. We looked through the awesome list of shitty fucking usernames, which is just great. I really like this tweet. I think this is when they were doing a connect, and it was just bad gateway, bad gateway, bad gateway, which that was the moment that shit actually hit the fan and went down, which is just wonderful to see. One thing that I want to touch on really quickly was how interesting it was to see Donk share their work. If you go into what they called the parlor tricks, which I love, you can see a bunch of interesting Python scripts that sort of tell you how they connected to those posts, how they pulled the data. And if you have any interest in programming or understanding how this stuff works, highly recommend reading through it. There's a lot of really good information in here. But essentially, you can see it was a very simple API call. So Parler has api.parler.com. And what's interesting is there doesn't seem to be, and I mean, I'm not like a super good programmer. I'm not even a programmer by any trade, but from what I can tell from these scripts, there's no like authentication on the API. Like usually when you connect to an API, so API stands for application interface. There's billions of APIs on the internet in order for applications to talk to each other. And a lot of application interfaces speak common languages so that, you know, I'm using a terrible example. The English servers can talk to the English servers, and the Japanese servers can talk to the Japanese servers because they speak the same protocols, right? It's kind of the same thing in this space here. So the interesting thing about the API again is that they were able to hit it without authentication, and I think that's probably the most fascinating part about how they pulled all of this data over. And I love that again. Like one things I love about like the hacker aesthetic is how great they are at sharing their work. It's super, super fascinating to see how good these fucking people are at just like, yo, we're gonna make sure everyone knows how we did this so that they can do it going forward. Um, All right, I'll go through this tweet. More stuff that's been just down. Some of the again, Gizmodo just doing an article on this. I think the real thing to hammer home here is that in the next couple of weeks, days even, we're going to see an enormous outing of folks on the internet. There's going to be a fucking huge group of people out there who are going to be exposed for saying some shit that they're not going to be able to walk away from. And as I get more access to these archives and I start to dive a little bit more into the metadata and some of the stuff that they're actually compiling in terms of those videos, it'll be very interesting to see like the type of conversations that are happening on there. I think I originally did have an article up here that I wanted to show you guys. I think it was maybe from our tweets, but it was literally like it was a tweet. It's not a tweet. It's a message on Parler. I guess they call them parlays because they're super fucking uncreative. So there's a parlay on there where someone was like, "Oh yeah, like we're making them scared. Like be scared now." Um, Let me see if I can pull it up. Because some of the stuff on here, man, is fucked. Like you got to remember, like these conversations were not just like innocuous little, oh, we should storm the Capitol. No, it was like kill Mike Pence, stab Nancy Pelosi, like some fucked up shit. Let me see if I can find it here. Ah, this one's good. This one's good. Um, what else do we got here? Oh, this is I love this one. We're gonna go through a couple of these. Here's another one. And again, cannot recommend following Donk, otherwise known as Crash Override. Absolutely fucking epic hack. Like, I don't think they give Nobel prizes for hacking, but if they do, whew, they should. Here's a great example of a post on Parler. How about make them hang? Execute them for treason, death to traitors, fuck Mike Pence. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that, guys, to say, like, these people are sick fucks. Um, I also am going to speak a little bit to the John Matze, whatever his name is. Sounds foreign. Sounds like a foreign name there, John. Not to foreign shame you, but that's not a very American name, if I may say so myself. Fucking piece of shit. Anyway, Sunday tomorrow at midnight, Amazon will be shutting off all of our servers in an attempt to completely remove free speech from the internet. Let's address that. Amazon's a private company. Free speech is allowed in the public square. It has everything to do with the government not limiting your free speech. You are not allowed to go into McDonald's and tell everyone to go fuck themselves. That's not free speech. That's a private company, private space. Get the fuck out. You want to go scream that in the street? Go the fuck ahead. Amazon is not in the public sphere. Although everything on the internet is, and there's a great argument to be made about Twitter and about, whether or not these companies have a monopoly on free speech. It's completely, anyway, I don't want to rant on this too much longer, but there's a possibility that Parler will be unavailable on the internet for up to a week as we rebuild from scratch. So, I mean, that's kind of bullshit because they don't really need to rebuild from scratch. They just need to find a new host. But there is a fair bit of retooling that has to happen there. So, yeah, I'll give it to them that there's some problems that they're going to have to deal with. We prepared for events like this, but never relying on Amazon's proprietary infrastructure and building bare metal products. I want to call that out for a second because that's a logical fallacy. Like that, like he literally said that Amazon's removed us from the internet. We prepared for events like this by never relying on Amazon's proprietary infrastructure and building bare metal products. That means they built it from scratch. Well, if you're not relying on Amazon's proprietary shit, then why were they capable of taking you off the internet? If your shit was so custom, if it was an on-premise data center or if it was just hosted on their stuff, pull your data off, move it to another web server. Boom, it's not proprietary, right? It doesn't need AWS, does it? So that statement right there is just absolute fucking bullshit. We will try our best to move to a new provider right now as we have many competing for our business. Go, okay, sure, maybe. However, Amazon, Google, and Apple purposely did this as a coordinated effort, knowing our options would be limited and knowing this would inflict the most damage. President Trump was banned from the tech companies. Yeah, he's banned from the tech companies. Sure, I'll give him that. But like, they have every right to ban him. I am not even debating whether or not it's a good idea to debate him. Or sorry, to ban him. There's a lot of really good credibility in the argument that it could do more harm than good. But that's not what this video is about, and that's not what I want to get into right now. Yeah, it was a coordinated. I wouldn't say it's a coordinated attack. I would say it was a lot of people were pretty pissed off that you tried to take over the U.S. government. That you helped incite a seditious riot against the American Capitol. That's maybe why companies don't want to fuck with you. It's just like they don't want to fuck with racists because it's bad for the brand. So anyway, this statement is like absolutely brilliant. Fuck this guy, and it's so exciting to see that they are off the fucking internet. I love it. Interesting. Parler admin, so you can see whether it's not violation of person's defamation, child abuse, or blood, threat, terrorism. I mean, this isn't that interesting, I guess. But last thing I want to look at here. Yeah, another sample. What's then? Like shut them down, Mr. President, try them, hang them, shoot them publicly, traitors, thieves, and perverts. To be clear as possible, these people were straight up deplatformed because of this kind of shit. It was because of the incitement of violence, it's the incitement of riots, and it's the incitement of insurrection. If these people are sharing pictures of kitties and saying, oh, I want my kitty for president, or if they're talking about the actual legitimate corrupt nature of most governmental systems, which we've all experienced, those are legitimate gripes. Those are legitimate grievances that people should be able to discuss in whatever platforms they want. As soon as you start inciting fucking riots and violence, go fuck yourself. Anyway, this is why tech companies are completely within their right because they have terms of service. You agree to those, and terms of services. There's a lot of fucking bullshit in there that has taken away a lot of people's freedoms in terms of the internet and our ability to like if you look at Facebook, like an example is Oculus Rift, their VR stuff. It's in their terms of service, if you don't read it carefully, that by 2023 you will have to have a Facebook account to use this. So if you go and buy this and you don't want to use Facebook in a couple of years, you literally will not be able to use that product. So these are the kind of things that get tucked into those terms of services that are kind of shitty and like, fuck you guys. But at the same time, they also exist to protect us from violence, to protect us from this kind of shit. Anyway, guys, I don't necessarily want to hammer on this too much longer. This has really just been a rant video because I wanted to get some thoughts out. I really want to talk about why it's interesting that Parler's gone down, what this hack is a potential, or sorry, the leak. I keep saying hack. The leak that's happening and what it could potentially leak about, this government protest, the rioters. I'm super, 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 super excited for law enforcement to get their hands on this because I think you're just going to see an enormous amount of charges, prosecutions, and it's quite possible, guys, that there's ongoing shit, like ongoing evidence of terroristic plots, threats, different things that these fucking idiots want to do to try and disrupt the American democracy or what's left of it. Anyway, it's been a heavy episode. I appreciate everyone joining. I'm trying to do more of these videos lately because I love talking about technology. I love talking about the internet, and I love talking about hacking. If you guys like it, please subscribe, like it, comment, send uh, things that are positive or negative. I don't care. Tell me I suck. That's also fucking cool, guys. Hope everyone's had some enjoyment watching me be dumb. I love you guys. I'll see you soon.